Hey everyone, just a quick announcement. If you're going to be in the New York area this weekend, Marvel News Sets is going to be attending New York Comic Con. We'll be covering the show, and on Friday, October 5th, we'll have a quick meetup. That'll be Friday, 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Bourbon Street Bar and Grill. I will have a link to the Facebook event in the post for this podcast episode, and we hope to see you there.
Way. Sometimes he's super campy and very Nordic. Sometimes he's really dumb. Sometimes he's a complete heartthrob. Sometimes he's an utter badass. But either way, we all can't resist Thor, the God of Thunder, as a character. However, this also applies to MCU's Thor trilogy. Each Thor film is special in its own way. Yes, even the Dark World. However, the Thor franchise has been one of the most mixed out of the MCU, and as a result, it can be really hard to find out the thread line in Thor's journey and where his character arc begins and where his character arc ends. The Thor trilogy essentially has had 3 different directors and 3 very different films. It's the least consistent, but today on AP Marvel, we're going to see if we can find any through lines in Thor's journey. I'm Izzy, and joining me today is Chris.
Hey, I'm Chris. What's up?
Anthony.
Hey, I'm Anthony. What's up?
Copycat.
And joining us today is our final StuCo teacher, finally on the show. Her name is Erin.
Yeah, I'm Erin. What's up?
All right. So, as context, Erin teaches the StuCo with me, and we have with the inclusion of her, we have finally gotten all 6 StuCo teachers on the podcast. Yay! I guess, Erin, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, I go to Carnegie Mellon University, like everyone here. I'm a computer science student, and I'm a sophomore. And Thor's my favorite Marvel character. So,
yes. Which is why we are all here today. And so, I guess to start off, before we go in depth into these movies, I guess we can all just go around the proverbial table and talk about our impressions of Thor, as a character, as a trilogy, just an overall impression of Thor throughout the MCU so far.
Sure. I mean, I remember, similar to how Iron Man was a lot of people's first introduction to that character in the mainstream, the first Thor movie was kind of ours, and I feel like people have kind of been ragging on that first movie by Kenneth Branagh. It was very over the top, Shakespearean, and if you look back, his eyebrows are dyed blonde, which is very strange.
I hate that.
Yeah,
I hate
bad
the
times
eyebrows
for all.
Make that movie the worst.
Yeah, sure, if you want to oversimplify it that way, but I mean, I feel like pre Ragnarok, Thor kind of had a reputation of being a kind of a lame character compared to everyone else. I don't know. He was very he had a smaller role in the first 2 Avengers movies, I feel. So whenever a Thor movie came out, it wasn't a big event. It was just kind of it's another one of those Marvel movies, you're watching the next TV episode of a show,
Yeah.
And now it's very different just from just one movie, and Infinity War kind of building off of that. So it's kind of been an interesting real world arc, seeing the perception of the character change, going from quote unquote the lame one to I don't know, I feel judging from my Twitter timeline, it seems like Thor has become a bisexual icon for some reason. But it's been quite an amazing transformation to see.
What?
And,
Wait, what?
We'll talk about that some other time. But yeah.
Yeah. I think Thor was sort of suffering from the Superman problem early in the MCU. It's just because he was such a powerful character, and like a lot of the comics, they really didn't know where to put him. So in the first Thor movie, they sort of made him mortal to make him more, I guess, relatable, and then Thor: The Dark World just didn't do anything interesting. But I think now that we're on like more, more than just like world threats, but like threats on like a cosmic scale, Thor can really shine just because he's more equipped to deal with those problems and more equipped like to struggle like in an interesting way against those problems.
Yeah, definitely. I think like Thor, he's been through a lot of shit, both like his franchise and like the character as a whole. But I think now like the publics have really turned like in Thor's favor. In Infinity War also, it's debatable what Infinity War does like with Thor's arc, but we'll probably talk about that at the end, most likely. Sorry, to put something down. But yeah, I remember seeing when I saw Thor in the theaters for the first time, like it was very much like I remember my dad being like wowed by like the 3D in a weird way, just like the 3D concept in general, not like Thor's 3D or anything, but I definitely agree with you, except like for a while, Thor was definitely like the lame duck, really just had nothing to do, and people were complaining that Thor is such a powerful character, like he's a god, but you just see him like swinging his hammer, and you don't really get any of the, you don't really get like the thunder, like lightning aspect until Infinity War and like Ragnarok even. Anthony, what were your first impressions?
I kind of saw it. I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it after everyone else, and I was just kind of like, "Oh, this is cool." I mean, I don't really remember it, but it definitely wasn't my favorite of the first series. It just kind of was like meh to me, because I've kind of seen that fish out of water story before, and I'm like meh. So. And, like, Thor always was kind of, like, my least favorite character up until Thor Ragnarok, where now he is my favorite. Like, he's in, like, my top 4 characters.
Did anyone have any feelings during the Iron Man 2 post-credits scene where, like, you see the hammer? Like, was anyone like, oh, shit, they're gonna show Thor? Or it was like, oh, cool, a hammer, I guess.
I mean,
I was kind of in between, because I didn't know it. I was excited in, like, oh, I get to learn about this new character, and they're expanding the universe now.
I'm trying to remember if I saw it, like, in theaters. Because I don't think I did. But, I kind of was just like, oh, I expected this.
Yeah, I saw Iron Man 2 in theaters, but, like, my parents didn't know that post-credit scenes were a thing, so I ended up not watching. I ended up reading about it, and I was thinking, like, if I was, like, if I was the Marvel fan that I was right now, when I was, like, 12 when I watched this, I would have been, like, freaking... I feel like I would have been, like, freaking out.
But if you were also a Marvel fan then, as you are now, you also would have known that there was a Thor movie coming.
That's also true. But yeah, I think...
Yeah, I
might have been too young.
I think what makes... Like, I mean, we'll talk about this more in the end credits episode, but what makes the hammer scene, like, much more impactful back then was that no one was really paying attention to everything else behind the scenes. But now what makes more end credit scenes more interesting is stuff that's going on behind the scenes that's not public. Like, even the tiniest bit of information. So, like, that hammer scene is probably, like, meh compared to, like, everything else. And even if you were paying attention, it probably was meh.
Meh is such an academic term that we're really using
here. It so many times. Yeah.
Meh.
AP meh. So throughout like this episode, I want to go into each of the 3 Thor movies, and I think I also definitely want to get into Infinity War because there's a bunch of debate, I think, with Thor around that, and just really go into them, like not only explore like, how we felt like personally, but like how Thor was in those movies, and sort of try to all congregate and come up together with maybe something concrete that we can take away, as we do in any AP Marvel episode. So, obviously, we will start at the beginning with Thor, and I remember, I mean, in general, was the first Thor movie. I remember being like pretty. It was still pretty fun, but this, I think,
it's
the
fine.
perpetual. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, I think the perpetual problem with the Thor franchise is that Loki is also a character in all these 3 Thor movies, and so that definitely, it's a weird like double-edged sword for Thor almost, because yes, Loki contributes. He's a great presence in the movie, and like the sibling relationship he has with Thor is so integral to each of these 3 movies. But you definitely remember Loki more when you walk out of that theater.
That was, I watched an interview with the writer of the first Thor movie, and he said that they knew they were going to use Loki for the Avengers, so the real point of the first Thor movie was just to set up Loki to be a good villain. So, more than setting up Thor to be a good hero, yeah.
Yeah, I think Thor was pretty, I think that we started to establish, like, Thor's, like, I mean, as you said, like, Anthony, like, it was a very fish out of water storyline, like, we'd seen it before. Wonder Woman almost, I think, tells the same story, but like a little bit better, and it was pretty, like, yeah, like Thor. I think Thor kind of like faded into the background a little bit because, like, as like Eric was saying about.
Wait, you're saying Wonder Woman did it better, right?
Yes,
okay.
Wonder Woman did a better job
good.
at the fish out of water
sure.
storyline.
Okay, I may have heard that wrong. Okay, cool.
Okay, but I think. I've been talking about like Thor. Like in the beginning, we were saying like Thor's like kind of like a.
He's a punchline.
He's not like a. He's definitely like a punchline. Definitely to the characters on Earth, he started out as that, and I feel like they don't. I don't know if they really like understand. They definitely don't understand like who he is until like after he like quote unquote like dies, and then Odin sort of gives him his like power back, but. I think for the most part, like Thor was, pretty I think in the first movie, pretty like one note, and
Thor sad, Thor mad, Thor sad, Thor glad.
Thor glad. Yes,
oh, yeah.
I was going to transition to that to give. Actually, you should probably tell this story, Chris, if you haven't. Did we talk?
Well,
about
we already talked about in the meta
yet?
episode, so yeah.
Okay,
like to summarize, like I've always kind of championed. Oh, maybe champion's too strong of a word, but I've always appreciated the first Thor movie because, in an age of nonsensical blockbusters, I felt that the first Thor movie had a very, very simple but easy to follow, like, classic arc. You know, like you start off with this guy who is an asshole, let's just call him. Then he kind of, like it kind of goes into like, the darkness of the soul in the middle. Like he's not worthy of his own power. And then he learns humility and then becomes worthy of his power. So in a way, like the first Thor movie is kind of an origin story. It's like, the person Thor, but this is how he becomes the heroic Thor, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that I think Marvel Studios was a little too cautious when making this movie, so there was a lot of lampshading. There was a lot of people in universe making fun of the ridiculousness of Thor. Which so you have a lot of scenes of like, when the Shield agents see the Warriors 3 and Sif, and they're like, we got Robin Hood, Jackie Chan, and Xena coming in, and it's like a lot of dumb jokes like that, and a lot of attempts at self-awareness.
They're like all the punchline. Like that's the whole bit.
Yeah.
Is that ha 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 ha? Look at him being so
yeah, exactly.
Shakespearean and weird and silly. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, like the movie laughing at itself. Like that's something like your mileage will vary because like you might not really get in with the joke. It might seem a little too desperate, and you get like a lot of silly stuff like. Thor getting in the hospital, and his face like gets in the window, and there's like a silly little gag there, or he gets hit by a car, or the part when he goes into the pet shop and he's like, "I need a horse," and then the
I need a horse.
Yeah, the pet shop keeper is just like the lamest looking dude ever. Like there was a casting call, it was like, "Hey, just find a nerdy dude."
I need a horse.
Very, yeah. It just felt very It felt way too different from the Asgard stuff, which had this very I think people kind of forget just like how different Asgard looked in that first movie compared to the later movies. Because there's something about the color tone that they used for that movie, and the way they shot, Dutch angles withstanding the way they shot that film.
Yep.
It looks very like golden, very regal, very magical. And you have like shots of Thor like yelling and in slow motion like throwing a table around or something like that, and it's like there's a lot of unintentionally funny stuff in Thor because it has that Shakespearean vibe. So like a lot of like Anthony Hopkins and Chris Hemsworth just like yelling at each other, and like you see the spit flying out of their mouth and stuff like that, and it's so over the top, so I don't know.
Well, they make a joke about that in Thor Ragnarok with the scene in the beginning.
Yeah, a little bit. And again, it's like that's more Taika like making fun of what came before, but
Dark
like
World,
yeah. But the thing is that the first movie is it's like it's trying to preemptively laugh at itself to be like, huh, yeah, we're cool, right? Yeah, this is funny.
And gods aren't real.
It doesn't really work that way. But I think after all of this Thor stuff that's happened afterwards, I feel like we should revisit the first movie because it just looks and feels different, and I think people should appreciate it a little more in that regard alone, regardless of the comedy that falls flat. But yeah, Kenneth Branagh, there you go.
Gilderoy Lockhart, Kenneth Branagh.
Yes, Mr. Shakespeare.
Sir
Kenneth Branagh. Yeah, to you.
Yes.
Sir Kenneth Branagh.
I mean, a lot of the important things in the first Thor movie, besides that character arc that we established, I mean, the Warriors 3 don't really have anything to do. Most of the human characters don't really have anything to do. It's just kind of a I mean, there is like a little bit with Selvig trying to kind of reconcile what he knows about the scientific world and all of these mythological-esque discoveries that he's making here. So in that regard, it's more so Thor's relationship with like these human characters. So with Jane Foster, with Eric Selvig. But it's more so serving Thor's own character growth, learning humility. That part of the arc that I described. So like the scene when he and Selvig are like having a drink, I actually really love that scene. And a lot of the conversations that he and Jane Foster have, like when they're in the RV or like when they're at the campfire, stuff like that. And we've talked about a lot of these scenes in previous episodes. Like we talked about the romance between Thor and Jane Foster, and then the whole Anthony, you and I talked to Betsy about the science aspect of that campfire scene. So a lot of it just had to do with setting up that part of the universe, not really so much Thor's character arc himself, because when Joss Whedon picks up the baton in Avengers 1, like, he doesn't really do a lot with that. It's more so like, hey, Thor touched down on Earth, and now Earth knows that there are, like, crazy aliens all over the place. And then, I don't know, I didn't want to talk too much about Loki, but, it's a very meaty film for him as well.
Yeah. I think Loki will eventually come up no matter which movie we discuss.
Yeah.
And that...
Especially the Dark World, where he's, like, the only good part.
Yeah. That's actually a great segue into Thor the Dark World.
Loki the Dark World.
Yes.
Can I introduce this movie with literally what, like, my first viewing of it?
Sure.
So, as you all know, all other than Chris, the three of us here have taken the class, and when I first took the class and Chris was teaching, I have not seen Thor: The Dark World. This was 2015.
Yeah, 2015.
Yes.
Fall of 2015.
2015?
Yeah.
Correct.
I did not see Thor: The Dark World at that time. And I was just like, and Thor: The Dark World was coming up on our schedule, so I was like, all right, I gotta watch it now. And I found a bootleg copy of it online, and there was
Not
no
that we condone
subtitles.
this.
There was no subtitles for any of the Dark Elves.
Oh, I know the story.
And I didn't need any subtitles because I still understood what the fuck was going on, but also didn't care. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I'm gonna go with it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Dude, I watched it with subtitles, and I still don't remember anything that they said.
Yeah, I just remember conversation happened. Then explosion, conversation happened.
They talk very slowly because they're speaking a fictional language that they probably learned about 5 minutes before shooting this.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was like really excited before the Dark World came out. Like I was like posting on Reddit. I was like, look at these clips from the movie that's about to come out, and like no one gave a shit. Like, and I was like, I don't understand why these people don't care. And then I went and saw the movie, and it was like, oh, they were right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the problem with this was that you get to a point where you're sitting in the movie theater and you see a bunch of trailers in a row, and they all just kind of blur together. So this is like after the first Avengers movie, so like understandably there are people who are just kind of marveled out. Like I personally still love Iron Man 3, but like that was the one that came in between Avengers 1 and Thor 2, so like people were not that into it, and people weren't really sure where the MCU was going after that. So like when you see a trailer to Thor 2, the sequel to a movie that not a lot of people were very fond of in the first place, that was just like a tiny little blip in the radar. And as an MCU fan back then, I also felt that way. I was like, oh, yo, the kid pushes the truck that's floating in the air and it spins around. I guess that's cool. Thor's hitting the ground with the hammer again. And then there's one part at the end where it looks like Jane Foster's about to die, and then you hear Chris Hemsworth dramatically yell, "No!" And then I was like, okay, I guess that's what that movie's gonna be then. And I feel like I watched that movie out of an obligation to keep track of all this stuff, you know?
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point, because I think it was either Iron Man 3 or Thor 2 or Thor: Dark World, but that was like it was the first movie I felt like I had to watch because like, oh, it's Marvel, right? I think I feel like I might have been Iron Man 2, but I think it was definitely like Thor: Dark World, and I remember like feeling like, all right, and then I remember like sort of the ending happening when you see like Loki's that's not Odin, that's Loki. I remember being unnecessarily excited as a kid the first time I watched it, and then when I watched the second time, I was like, what is this?
Yeah, I was just thinking like the Thor franchise definitely has the like most death fake outs of any Marvel franchise, because you've got Loki who's done it like 3 times, and then there's the Thor fake out in the first one.
Way, right? Fake it out like a bunch of times or something.
I mean, a lot of people die. Like, I remember thinking, like, sorry to, like, cut you off, Erin, but I remember thinking, like, as a kid, like, out of that theater, like, oh, the third Thor film's gonna be like Hamlet, and Thor is gonna, like, rise to the throne, and Loki's gonna die, and it's gonna be super cool and, like, epic, and it obviously ended up, like, being super different, and I ended up not being as excited as Thor 2 as I was, like, when I first watched it, but there is an element of, like, people dying a lot in Shakespeare that sort of makes it, like, pretty funny that people, you're right, Erin, like, there are the most, like, fake out deaths in the Thor franchise. Yeah. I don't know if that's the nature of just, like, I don't know if that's the nature of Loki or of just coincidence and whatnot. So we talk a lot in the class as well when we talk about the Dark World, about how Thor's sort of like, I guess, gotten smarter, I think is a phrase we sort of use. Like there's this line Loki says, it's like, "Oh, you lied to me, I'm impressed." And there's this deleted, and like we show this deleted scene where Thor puts down his mug gently instead of like crashing it to the ground like he does in the first Thor movie, like another. And it's a sense of like Thor becoming more human, but but I also find it interesting. Like, I don't know how much that like sort of humanness like lines up throughout like the next couple movies. I guess like I don't know if like the human element of like Thor, like sort of learning to like be like a little bit more like gentle. It still is a little bit prevalent, but definitely I think the second movie had that shine out a lot more. If that makes any sense.
So the interesting thing about Thor: The Dark World and his character arc there is that it's a very flat arc. It seemed more like a demonstration of the person that Thor is now as a result of his growth in the first movie. So, I've always joked that the only internal conflict in Thor: The Dark World for that character is his desire to bang Natalie Portman or not, because it's just about him choosing his responsibility in Asgard or him choosing his love for Jane Foster, which of course doesn't matter at the end because they break off screen. So some interesting, like the only interesting Thor-centric parts were really at like the last act of the movie, like the last two acts of the movie. So first I would say him creating this plan to get Jane Foster out with the Warriors 3 and Sif and Loki. So the fact that he kind of puts together like, and it's shot like a kind of heist movie where you see them planning out the plan and then you see the plan actually going on at the same time. So the fact that he's able to orchestrate that, whereas like in the first movie he would probably just smash everything he sees.
Yeah.
Second, there's the familial drama aspect of it. So when they are traveling through, I forget what
one of the
which
realms.
realm it is.
Yeah,
it's the very dark one. It's the one with like
Dark World.
Sure, yeah, and it's this very like extended conversation about between Thor and Loki, and like they kind of hit a few nerves with each other when Frigga, the mother, is mentioned. After that, that's kind of it, because he's just kind of like a vehicle. He's just, he gets into a fight, but like he's not really the one. Like there's nothing that he does during that final battle to indicate that he's learned anything, because the end is just him like throwing javelins at Christopher Eccleston, whose character's name I already forget.
it's okay. That's perfectly fine.
Malekith.
Yeah, sure. And like he's throwing the weird science things that Selvig and Jane Foster made, and that's it. And then for no reason he's like, "Yeah, Dad, I'm just gonna go back to Earth and bang Natalie Portman." And it's like there was no like through line in that movie, It just kind of like he's like sad in the beginning of the movie because he doesn't know if he wants to be on Asgard, and then at the end he's just like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna leave Asgard, peace out."
Oh, that's the name of it. Svartalheim.
Yeah.
Svartalheim. So it's like sad, more sad, not sad. I feel like
sure. I don't know. I could rewatch that movie again because it's the shortest one, because there's
really
no meat to that movie. Yeah, it is the.
I swear, I thought it was like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I thought it was
like not including credits. I think it's only an hour and a half.
Or two. Wait, I don't know.
It's at least
it's not even 2 hours.
It's
with credits. It's not even 2 hours.
Is it at least 100
fun
minutes?
Fun fact, all
Yeah.
of the realms are referenced and pictures of them are shown, except for Alfheim, which is where the light elves are.
Wow, that's
So
so fun.
Muspelheim is the one with what's his name, Surtur,
Yeah.
in Thor Ragnarok. Niflheim is actually shown when all the Valkyries are flying through the air,
Yeah.
attacking Hela. That's Niflheim.
Yeah.
Then Nidavellir from, the thing. And then Vanaheim, which is shown, is where the rocks things were.
So
Yeah.
the
I'm
thing
actually-
yeah.
I'm really disappointed they never show Alfheim, because that's like one of the coolest realms you could show. It's got like candy, and it's supposed to be like this ridiculously over the top sort of place. But I think part of that is just like, at least the first two Thor movies, they're always like really scared to acknowledge, oh, this is actually sort of magical. So
Yeah, and the strange part is that in the lead up to the second Thor movie, they were saying like, oh, we want the second movie to explore more of the realms, So I was under the impression that it was going to be like this crazy like road kind of movie, which was only like partially true for like a very short amount of time. Like you got like you have that scene that I talked about with Thor and Loki, and then
Remember the scene with Thor and Malekith where they were hopping between all the worlds?
Exactly,
and
yeah,
cars
and
were
that,
flying through?
yeah, and that was like a very like tiny way of doing that, like it was more of a gimmick than an actual plot point or a theme. That would have been cool if they were like actually, if they made it some sort of like Lord of the Rings-esque epic where they have to like travel through the realms to like stop the convergence or something like that. But it's really just like cameo appearances and that one giant monster that's, I guess, still hopping by the end of that movie. If you remember what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Like
Yeah.
Thor comes back to Earth, he kisses Jane, and then you see like the monster like raging throughout Europe.
There's spice elves in Alfheim.
yeah, Alfheim is like legit. There's mermaids, and there's
It's like this.
farm
It's like this
candy.
actual like Germanic like fantasy world with like castles and fairies.
Yeah,
and
why the fuck couldn't we see that?
Wait, Erin, do you want to talk about your conspiracy theory?
For Thor 4? Oh yeah, I'll talk
If
about
you
that.
want.
Okay, so as everyone knows, James Gunn was recently fired, and Guardians 3 was put on hold due to this. So there was a lot of controversy, like, among the actors for this. So, and also, I guess, like, how can Disney find someone to really follow up James Gunn's performance? So, like, people were saying, oh, maybe they'll get Taika Waititi. But why would Taika Waititi do Guardians 3? Because he already has, like, his own sort of film voice. He would have to create his own, like, Guardians playlist, and everyone will just compare him to James Gunn. Why would he do that when instead he's already sort of planned for Thor 4, according, like, for example, in one article I read, he and Chris Hemsworth actually sort of outlined what they do at a New Year's Eve party. Further, Thor Ragnarok and Guardians Volume 2 have almost the same, like, overall grosses. Like, it's within 20 million of each other.
So you're saying instead of making it Guardians 3, they'll just make Thor 4?
Yeah, and it's like, there's sort of like a gap.
No, people would hate that. No, that's dumb. People would hate that.
There's a
It's
gap
not
in the
dumb.
cosmic.
It's a concept.
Yeah. There's a gap
It's a
in
concept.
the cosmic part of the MCU because, like, who knows if there ever will be a Guardians 3.
Yeah, I just don't know if he'd be down for that. Like, he's already making a movie by himself, like the Hitler thing.
Oh.
And
Well, I thought he had already made that movie. And then I know he's making Wolves, which was like a follow-up for,
And then he's making What We Do in the Shadows too.
Yeah, but
I believe they're making that to a TV series instead.
Oh.
But he is involved with it. He was attached to Akira at some point.
Yes, I thought he was
live
still doing
action.
it.
It's probably still in negotiations if I had to guess, but
Yeah, he said he was. I remember seeing like I'm really interested in doing that.
yeah. Wait, are we done talking about the Dark World?
Yes, we are. This was the
I want
trend.
to talk about the actual good movie, please.
Yeah, the conspiracy. Yeah, the conspiracy theory was a segue because I'm good at those. sort of.
Wow.
I don't know. But yeah, Thor Ragnarok, to no surprise, was probably most people's favorite Thor movie. Like
Probably
It's
one of
your
my
favorite movie.
Marvel movies.
Yeah, it's your favorite, right, Erin?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
For Ragnarok?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, but yeah, I think we can't. I think it's. I think we can't go around talking about Thor Ragnarok without, I guess, addressing this first question. Like, there were so many drastic changes from like not just like from the Dark World and like Thor, in like Thor Ragnarok, and I will definitely say that most of them, like, were welcome. But
I think all of them were welcome.
Yeah.
There was a big thing where people were just like, I remember in 2013 or 2014, when there was that big conference where Kevin Feige came out and did the Apple keynote of like, this is the movies that are coming out, and then Thor Ragnarok came out. There was very little fanfare for that. And as well as the fact
No. The thing that made the fanfare was the word Ragnarok. But but when you look at the old logo for that, it's literally just
I was gonna make that
the
point
Thor.
as well.
It's literally just the Thor: The Dark World logo, but with more smoke and fire, and like it's just slightly darker. Whereas like now it's like 80s
synth wave.
Yeah. In our lecture for Thor: Dark World for StuCo, like I think, well, for one, Erin really took the reins on that because it's her favorite movie. But you talk about that too, like how it looked so different to like
what it actually was.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was because of like maybe after like Ultron, I think is like the point where like I think Marvel starts to realize, oh, like we're being like super serious, like we'll like lighten up a little bit, and I think like I think like somewhere in phase 3, a light bulb just like hit, and they start producing like hit after hit after hit after hit. It was just impossible to like have them top.
The entirety of phase 3 was good.
Yeah. It's the most like solid and consistent.
I think with like the division of the phases, like phase 1 they were just trying to find out, how to make good superhero movies, and with phase 2 they were just sort of plodding along, following what they previously discovered, and with phase 3 they actually decided to start like experimenting with new things. So they've brought on more independent directors and people, and go with more original stories compared to the other 2 phases. So it's definitely a real improvement.
So I wanna preface, Mike, before I get into Thor Ragnarok, that a lot of what I'll be talking about is also referenced in a really great video by Movies with Mikey, which is part of the Film Joy YouTube channel, and the title of the video is Why Thor Ragnarok is the Perfect Reboot. So I highly recommend anyone listening to check out that video. It's very good, and it condenses basically all my thoughts on what I think about how great this movie is, and what it does for the MCU, and what it does for Thor as a character, into one little 24-minute video.
It was, I think, where do we start, I guess, but like the trailer, I think, like...
Yeah, this is going to be something different, this is going to be something fun. Everyone knows how bad the Dark World was, and what Thor was, and how people thought about Thor from Age of Ultron. It's like, we're going to do something different. Everyone, hop aboard this train.
That trailer alone was like, it was basically the scene in Pulp Fiction where they put an adrenaline shot in Uma Thurman's heart, and she just like comes alive all of a sudden. Like that's basically what that was, because I think people were unfairly comparing that trailer to like, oh, this is just like Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think it's very different from the
which in terms of like, okay, yes, it's like lighter and funnier,
there's
and
colors.
Like
there's
pop
an 80s
music
song in it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Guardians don't have like copyright on colors and music.
And music. The thing is that I feel that the tonal change was more of a reaction to the Thor movie specifically, and not so much the overall MCU. Because when you look back at like what Taika Waititi was saying about his ideas, he was saying first off, he wants Thor to be the most interesting character in his own movie, which was kind of like a side jab at the fact that like Loki was
everyone focused on Loki,
center star.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, he always talks about Big Trouble in Little China being his main inspiration. You know, the idea of you have this protagonist who is not really that involved in the actual overall conflict. So like Thor is like thrown in this the Sicarian revolution, which like he couldn't really give a damn about. He's just trying to get back to his home world, but like so many unfortunate things are just happening to him over and over again, and you kind of feel like this like kinsmanship, like this companionship with Thor, like as you like follow him through this like absurd journey. And it continued the trend of trying to make Thor into a comedy to be more relatable, but it worked because instead of making fun of itself, it was just a genuinely funny movie. Like they were able to kind of use Hemsworth's
natural
ability.
Comedic prowess.
Yeah, because you've seen him in Ghostbusters, you've seen him in Vacation and stuff like that. Like he is known to be
really good?
I don't know
Vacation
if those movies are
not
good, but like apparently he was good in them. So like,
Vacation was not. I heard Ghostbusters was not bad. I heard the new Ghostbusters was like pretty good, but like no one watched because of all like the shit surrounding it. Yeah.
Hashtag the feminists are taking over. I love that.
That's a whole other. That's a whole different discussion with that.
That's another episode. It's interesting that you mentioned, Chris, that like it was. I forgot. I don't remember your words. You know, this is like a minute ago. Like, so like being self-aware and like being like making fun of itself, but like it actually pays off. And like and earlier when we were talking about the first story, we were saying like it kind of sort of. It was making fun of the concept in general, but like it was making fun of itself, like just the concept in general, and just being like, haha, like we're making fun of the fact that we're very
so ridiculous.
Yeah,
this is becoming. This is now a self-aware character that is just that literally becomes the god that he was. There's no more boundary between the science and magic. We're not trying to be realistic with this. We're just trying to make it. We're just trying to make it good. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
definitely.
I mean, it's embracing the absurdity, and it's
You see it as soon as he lands on Sakaar, where it starts fucking playing imagination.
Yeah. Exactly.
When he's on like the little thing, and he's going to like the joke, like the homage to the ferry boat ride, and walking the chocolate factory.
Also, just the language, you know, the way that Thor and Loki actually speak. It's less Shakespearean prose, and more just like. I mean, like, Thor says like in most of his sentences, and he kind of has like this kind of silly exactly.
In the video I'm referencing, he kind of calls Thor like relates him to the OC, like a character from the OC who's like actually a bumbling idiot and says like all the time. Yeah. So it's that's funny.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on that, like especially when you compare the first time you see adult Thor in Thor 1, when he's like about to be crowned king and he has the ceremonial helmet and he's like all cocky and like kind of reveling in all of the glory. And then when he actually becomes king at the end of Ragnarok, he just kind of turns around, looks at all his people, and he gives like the most awkward wave ever. Like it's like a very stark contrast, you know, like the humility really shows in like this very big way, and I think the language kind of helped ease us into that, because when you
did a big part of like showing his humility as well, combined with all the humor and stuff. Yeah.
And the thing about like rewatch that scene in Avengers 1 where Thor like extracts Loki from the shield Quinjet, and they're talking on this rock like in the middle of the forest or something like that, and it's like a 3 to 5 minute scene, and it's just kind of Thor and Loki like kind of catching up and like getting all of these they're getting all these things out of the air, but the way they talk, you can just imagine Joss Whedon like at his keyboard just like gleefully typing in as the most like Shakespeare ass shit ever. Like He is full of
you wanna do Get
himself.
Help? Hey, you want to do Get Help?
Do I
Get help?
do I look to be in a gaming mood? And it's like stuff like that, and it feels so strange just watching that now, compared to Get Help, I guess.
When I was a child, Loki knew I loved snakes, so there was a snake crawling around, and I picked up the snake and I was admiring it, and then he transformed, and then it bit me, and he transformed back into Loki, and it's like
it's me.
Yeah. Yep.
Just telling that story is perfect and kind of encapsulates what the drastic change in dialogue is in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think like the most, I guess, one of the most telling aspects to see how much like see what Thor Ragnarok did for the Thor franchise as in general was like all the meaning and significance behind everything. Almost like, for example, like the song they play like the immigrant song like in the trailer, and then they use it in like the first scene of Thor Ragnarok, and then it comes back again when Thor is fighting Hela off in like the final battle, and like just the fact that they made significance of that song, like it mattered in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think just shows like that the one thing that big thing that they changed was like they just put more care into it. Like Taika Waititi sort of Taika Waititi sort of like fleshed out Thor a lot and like made him like a character who really does like learn and who's quotable and who's memorable even. Like I was in my one of my English classes and I almost quoted Asgard isn't a place, it's a people, because it just stuck out that much more to me.
Come on. Was it like that's
They were talking about like the different definitions of like it was like they were talking about the different definitions of like science as a science writing class. So they were talking about the different definitions of like science like the study and like the biology, the chemistry, and then the science like the scientists studying like these sciences. So like it's a macro in that sense. It's like I almost quoted like Asgard isn't a place, it's a people, and I was like, no, don't. I was like, nah, it's fine. I don't know enough about what I'm learning.
so kind of going into a little bit more on Thor's. Do you guys want to go into Thor's arc, or do you guys want to talk more about like the side characters and the plot of the movie and what it kind of does for the Thor franchise and the MCU?
I'm more interested in the 3-movie arc, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
So,
I also
So what we see in Thor 1, we see Thor, fish out of water, blah blah blah. I need my hammer back. Learns what it interacts with human beings. Learns how to be a person. Learns how to care and what does it mean to be to be Thor, God of Thunder. All that stuff. And then Thor: The Dark World is like
it's like him like because it's him like
what's a good thing?
It's him choosing between like Earth and like Asgard, and like granted it's not done well, but you sort of see him trying to balance like that double life. Like other MCU properties have done this better, but like that's I think at the core what Thor 2 focuses on, and I think Thor 3 is like him sort of.
Thor becomes human to become a god.
yeah. I mean, it's really weirdly, but that kind of. I think Thor 2 kind of like throws a wrench in all of this because, in my head I have this idea because I go back to those first image and the final images of Thor about to become king and then Thor actually becoming king as like the bookends of that trilogy. I know that like him being grounded on Earth is a necessary part of his journey to eventually becoming a worthy leader of the Asgardian people. The problem with Thor 2 is that it kind of ends with the conclusion that he belongs on Earth, which doesn't really make sense. And then Age of Ultron undoes that because he's like, oh, I have this vision of the Infinity Stones. I have to back. I have to take up my larger responsibility for the universe, for like all of the realm, for the whole of existence. Then you get to Ragnarok, where like he, kind of fulfills that, not in the way he expected to, because the Asgard, the place gets freaking destroyed at the end. But he is the de facto leader. Like he saves all of them and he leads them now. And then I guess, I don't know, briefly about Infinity War, his whole arc is like, hey, what happens when he loses literally all of that?
Yeah.
What happens when you lose
yeah.
a man who's lost everything?
Yeah.
But
Aaron, were you trying to
I
say
was
something?
saying, like, with Thor 2, Thor's like, yo, I belong on Earth, and then psych, I'm going back to space.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I actually, like, the thing that interests me most about Ragnarok is sort of, like, I guess first of all, like, the commentary about, like, how to deal with loss, and also, in addition, like, sort of finding out, the way they handle, like, the backstory for Asgard, it's sort of, I don't know if I want to get in, but, like, Thor finding out, oh, maybe this place isn't exactly what I thought it was, like, I always thought, you know, we found this through diplomacy, but it sort of has, like, some historical parallels, arguably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The concept of like washing history, you know, kind of cleaning it up in a way that's more digestible. Like yeah, usually through artistic murals of like very happy images, when in actuality it was really like a lot of like atrocities of war and a lot of just like gnarly, like awful stuff. For some reason, Siri thought I called it, but no, I did not. So,
I'll mention this in my dad episode, and I've mentioned it multiple times before. Odin is supposed to be that you know, is the father and the father figure to Thor, and when Thor learns of the mistakes of his father, he does his best to fix that. To change the mistakes of the people before him, to not be a war criminal.
Are you talking about Black Panther?
No, I'm talking about Thor. But it's the same.
It's very similar, yes. Yeah, I think like, yeah, it's a lot. I think it's a lot about like, you know, changing like his entire like. Before, like, Infinity War, like, in Thor Ragnarok, his entire, like, world almost, like, breaks. Like, his father is dead. Like, oh, Sykes, I had a sister. And he's becomes a king of Asgard, like, in the place and, like, the people sense. Because he's sort of learned to, like, delegate, like, delegate effectively and, like, really be, like, a really good king. And if they do a Thor 4, it would be really interesting to see where that ends up. But really quickly.
Oh wait, okay. Well, I could add on to my Thor, if they make a Thor 4, what I would like the plot to be.
Yes.
But I would really like, you know, sort of a siege storyline, not necessarily like have, you know, Earth attack Asgard, but sort of the idea of building Asgard on Earth. I think it'd be really interesting. Sort of like,
can we get Beta Ray Bill? That'd be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Sort of like the interactions, like if Thor ended up settling down in Norway or New Mexico, which would be sort of interesting because it had like a comic parallel with Broxton, Oklahoma, but in Norway. Yeah. Like how, first of all, the like residents of that area would deal with having these weird Shakespearean people be their neighbors and stuff.
What would Thor's arc be? What would his change from Thor Ragnarok with person that's lost and Infinity War with person that's lost everything?
Well, I would imagine
loose cannon, too old for this shit. He's got something.
I mean, you have to speculate on what happens in Avengers 4.
Yeah.
Oh god.
He's got nothing to lose. He's a loose cannon cop with nothing to lose. I'm sorry, I just love. He's lost everything.
They're actually just gonna turn it. They're gonna turn it into a sitcom where you have an Asgardian and a human be roommates.
Isn't that what Team Thor is?
Dale?
No, Daryl.
Daryl. Yeah. super quickly, I want to touch into, I guess, y'all's opinions on what Infinity War did to Thor.
What it did to Thor. What did they do?
What did they do to my son? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have heard both camps on, like, how, like, oh, like, the Russos didn't completely destroy Thor's arc, and then the other argument, which I think I'm sort of in, was that the Russos almost undid everything Taika Waititi did in Thor Ragnarok, because, like, now you have Thor frantically searching for a weapon, Stormbreaker, even though he's shown in Ragnarok that he doesn't need a hammer to be a god.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to hear
So the argument
y'all's
is
thoughts
that,
about
that weapon is for to kill Thanos, but it's not. He doesn't need that to be a god. But that's being very specific. No, I'm just being very specific. Like, that's the specific reason, but it still doesn't come across like that. Like, you know what I mean?
I think in the broader sense, like, it just seems like, oh, like Thor's like searching for this weapon.
Like,
but
he's not gonna have that
like,
weapon after Avengers 4, regardless of what happens.
Oh, you think?
I don't think he'll have that.
So?
I think he'll actually give it away to someone.
Who could possibly hold that thing?
I mean, it's just made of Groot's arm.
I don't think he'll need that.
Mm-hmm.
But
but you gotta sell toys, man.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll like smelt it back into a hammer, just like.
Ugh, no.
For old
that's
time's sake.
No.
So here's the thing about Stormbreaker, and I totally get why people are upset about it, and I to an extent I was as well. It's like one of like 3 big things that it kind of like quote unquote undid from Ragnarok. So the thing about Stormbreaker is they're trying to fit Thor into the theme of the movie Infinity War, not necessarily his overall character arc. Because a big theme of Infinity War was willpower, right? Like it's all about like Thanos having the willpower to like do what he believes to be the thing that has to be done, and everyone else's willpower to stop him at any cost. And like,
are you the god of hammers?
Yeah, and most of the characters are not able to like make sacrifices, whereas like Thanos was, that therefore he wins, which we already talked about. It was kind of a dubious theme, kind of cynical, but when you look at Thor like holding the door open, like holding the like when he's letting the energy of the star, basically of the dying star, basically go through him, that was meant to be like, okay, this is what Thor's story is about. It's about his willpower, how far he's willing to go to defeat Thanos, because Thanos like just decimated everything that he had. And Thor has like nothing left to lose anymore, so he's just like, he's doing everything in his power that he can to like defeat this dude. The problem with that is that, you know, the whole theme of Ragnarok was that, okay, the power is actually within yourself, you know, like you are the god of thunder, like you can do all, and not once does he try to actually do that in Infinity War. Instead he's like very fixated on like, I cannot fight Thanos without this thing, you know. And to be fair, like even when he figured out his power in Ragnarok, he still couldn't fight Hela. He had to enlist.
He was pushed to his limit.
No, he had to get giant fire dude Surtur to do it for him.
Oh, yeah.
Thor did not beat Hela. He outsmarted her, but he did not actually beat her in physical combat because he was not able to.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't count on Surtur this time around. Like, so like he wanted to become that guy. And to some people that it like rubbed people off the wrong way, because, you know, it's like Thor turning into a weapon of mass destruction into like, instead of this lovable smart guy that we know in Ragnarok, you know. Cause like now he's just upset. He's vengeful, you know, which is not a character trait that people find to be positive in these Marvel movies, especially when you talk about Civil War, which is by the same damn writers, where the whole theme was like, vengeance bad. And to be fair, vengeance is what gets Thor to mess up at the end. He's obsessed about killing Thanos and making him feel pain, but Thanos still does the thing because he's like grandstanding. And I'll go quickly about the Asgardian people dying and him getting the eye back. Sure.
To add on to that last point, maybe that was kind of the whole thing, was that that even though the hammer was used, the axe was used more as a pain mechanism, like you look what you did to me, like revenge mechanism, than him, like if he actually
like
just
an
went
actual
out of his
weapon.
way then like an actual not like an actual weapon, but like him using his own power to defeat him. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do y'all think of him getting an eye back?
I think.
Oh my god, that was so fast. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna take his eye," and then that's.
Yeah.
I don't like the eye thing.
Me neither. I think I feel I would prefer if they just like, I don't know, if he took out the robot eye, or if they like ripped his other eye out or something, like.
No, it wouldn't. It still wouldn't make sense metaphorically, because like the loss of the eye is supposed to be like Odin, like something you sacrifice something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like they kind of did for toys. I'm not gonna lie. Now that I think about it more, but
What do you mean? It takes 5 seconds to not have an eye.
But like aesthetic, aesthetic was.
What's wrong with my Thor toy? He only has one eye.
Yeah, but just to quickly wrap it up, I have 2 questions for all of you, because the third one, I know everyone's answered for already, probably. How would you define Thor as a character, and how would you define Thor as a franchise? Including and you can include all the stuff we talk about, like Avengers and Ultron and Infinity War. You can include those details in the pot as well.
Definitely him becoming a one-man army, like an arrogant one-man army, into a more wholesome team player, I think, is the big thing.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe his overall arc. And even though the tones of the movies, they're all so different, you know.
Yeah.
I think the problem with Thor in the ensemble movies is he just in the Joss Whedon ones, he's just kind of there as a necessity, you know.
A punchline again.
Not even a punchline, because there's no
I think he's more of a punchline in Avengers 1.
Besides the Shakespeare in the Park gag, there wasn't sure.
The dialogue being drastically different, look at them speaking English.
Yeah. The problem is you can't view Ragnarok. You can't view Infinity War as Ragnarok 1.5 or something like that, because it's, like I said, it's about Thor helping the overall movie rather than the overall movie serving his character arc. So that's where things kind of get a little shaky. Which is why I mentioned the eye, because what that does, that better serves Rocket's character as someone who's able to empathize with someone and be like, hey, I know you've gone through a shit time, but I know I can't fix everything for you, but here's one thing I can try to fix for you. That's a great Rocket moment, but not a good Thor moment, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting when you get,
to and that comes down to how to manage every character in an ensemble movie. Does one character lose something that another character drastically gains, and you have to balance that.
Yeah, so I think I don't think they definitely did not plot out an arc for Thor overall. You know, they're just that's not really the case with any of the Marvel characters. They're just picking up on where the last dude left off. So
yeah,
I think Ragnarok's significant because it is the one where they figured out how to make Thor into a cool leading man. You know?
Yeah.
And the personality was translated well into Infinity War, even though some of the plot elements were not so much, according to a lot of Thor fans. So I don't know. When we talk about who's gonna die in Avengers 4, like, no one's mentioning Thor because no one wants him to die, because it feels like we just figured him out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So other than the points that Chris made, which are very good and have basically what I was going to say, I'm gonna end this with a quote by the video I also mentioned. Thor. What?
just play that video like during this podcast instead.
No. I want to link it. I want to link the video
Okay.
because I think it's very important to what we also discussed.
Yeah.
The video only talks about Thor Ragnarok. It doesn't talk about any of the other movies.
Sure.
But it says Thor Ragnarok is a single film and a popular franchise, itself a part of a much larger branded franchise that managed to reboot its own narrative and tone without changing actors or affecting the larger cinematic world at large. And this should have shaken the fabric of the MCU, but it didn't.
Erin, do you have any last thoughts?
No, I think it's about covered. I mean, yeah, he went from a vain, foolish, cruel boy to like a king who should have aimed for the head. But
Yeah. All right, thank you so much for working with me today. For reference, Anthony said before the podcast, Izzy, are you okay? And I said, yes, everything's under control. But like, it actually is. Like, don't worry. But like, yeah, thank you for being all with me today. If you want to go around, give your social media handles, Anthony.
Mine is at the Pizza Taco on Twitter.
Yeah. Chris, what about you?
You can find me at Compendorizer. I might be wrong on the schedule. I have to look it up later. Maybe I'll edit this out later, but I think I might be at New York Comic Con by the time this is out. So if you're in New York City, HMU.
Erin, is there anything you want to plug?
Nope. I didn't realize I had to Twitter for this.
Are you pulling another Thomas in that you just don't want to be found?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a Facebook, but I don't have any other.
Yeah. No Insta. No
Twitter.
LinkedIn.
Oh, I have a LinkedIn.
Oh my god. Holy shit. Guys, Venom comes out in like a week and a half.
What?
Yeah.
Venom comes out next week.
Yeah. I think what I have planned for that is not only an episode examining the actual movie, but also just examining the existence of the movie. Because I know Thomas will have a lot of thoughts about this, so look forward to that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think basically we have a Facebook group for people who take this StuCo, and it's going to be either #WatchVenom or #BoycottVenom, and we'll see what happens.
Venom. Come on, that's such a stupid thing.
I came up with it initially.
That's true.
Because I also didn't witness any of it. The only reason also why I'm thinking about like just bootlegging it is because like the turd in the wind quote.
They're not doing anything malicious with this movie. At worst, it's just a dumb thing that no one's gonna watch. There's no need to protest against the evils of the Venom movie.
Look,
we'll go in.
God damn.
We'll go into that. It's okay. We'll go into that story in a couple of weeks.
I got Movie Pass. I'm just gonna watch that for free.
Failing industry.
Actually, next week. But yeah, as always, you can follow me at Delirlin. Thank you to Stephen Molitor for the music, and Charles for our swanky new logo. And
wait, we're gonna use the logo finally?
Yeah, we've been using it.
Yeah. On the YouTube videos, yes.
Oh.
I gotta change up the podcast artwork, but yes.
Okay. I mean, the other one's like just me, so it's like thanking myself, and that's like really awesome. But yeah, thanks guys.
Bye.